Henry Ford, the visionary father of the modern auto industry, grew up on a farm outside of Detroit. Maybe that's why he designed his Model T to run on ethanol alcohol. Ford's alcohol captured 25% of the fuel market in the Midwest, a fuel made from corn. White lightning, moonshine. Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil, started funding an amendment that would become known as Prohibition. That one law shut down all alcohol production in the U.S., including ethanol alcohol. For 12 of the 13 years of Prohibition, Ford continued to produce ethanol-compatible cars. And then he gave up. 1 year later, Prohibition was lifted. President Teddy Roosevelt broke up Standard Oil due to its monopoly of the energy market and its interference in government. 88 years later, the two largest parts of the company, Exxon and Mobil, reunited, forming a global corporation with profits totaling more than all the automakers combined.
The oil companies are making the largest profits ever. Exxon Mobil made over $40 billion in a single year. You know, that's larger than the GDP of some small countries.
According to the Center for Public Integrity, the oil industry spent more than $420 million between 1998 and 2004 funding politicians and political parties. ExxonMobil came in first, giving $60 million. Chevron Texaco gave $40 million, and BP gave $30 million. This really begs the question, is our government for sale? Several months before 9/11, Vice President Dick Cheney held 40 secret meetings with the heads of major oil companies.
In those meetings, it was obvious that the oil companies were writing energy policy for our country.
Documents pertaining to Cheney's meetings, released through the Freedom of Information Act, were purposefully blanked out. However, the Justice Department released maps from the meetings that showed the oil companies discussed Iraqi oil pipelines, oil refineries, and oil fields. Iraq had the second largest oil reserves in the world. The maps were dated March 2001, 6 months before 9/11.
We consume 25% of the world's oil. We have 2% of the world's oil, all of our reserves. We cannot drill our way out of this.
What we are seeing is a government run for the oil companies. It's very, very clear.
When we tried to swear them to an oath, the Republican majority refused to have them take the oath. It was outrageous.
We look forward to questions. Senator Cantwell?
Mr. Chairman, I would like the committee to vote on whether we swear
There will
in.
be no vote. That's not in order at all. It's the decision of the chairman, and I have made that decision.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we swear in the witnesses.
And I rule that out of order.
I second the motion.
Thank you very much. That's the last we're going to hear about that because it's out of order.
Mr. Chairman, if a senator makes this request and there's a second, why wouldn't we have a vote on that?
Because you can't vote to put in the rules something's not there.
The guy that made sure the oil executives were not under oath is Senator Ted Stevens from the great oil state of Alaska. He was later indicted for accepting undisclosed gifts from oil companies. Viking Grill, $5,000. 1999 Land Rover, $50,000. Extensive home renovations, $250,000. Owning your own senator from Alaska? Priceless.
Here they were preparing the country for a disaster that we now see upon us, and they denied that they were there.
Did your company or any representatives in your companies participate in Vice President Cheney's Energy Task Force in 2001? The meeting?
No.
Sir?
No. We did not, no.
Suddenly on September 12th, we have a war meeting in the White House where you have Paul Wolfowitz, Deputy Secretary of Defense, saying, we got to take out Iraq. Paul Wolfowitz said, in an interview with Vanity Fair magazine. We just had to pick an issue to sell this case to the American public, and the issue we picked was WMD.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
The nexus of WMD and terrorism is now being created. It doesn't exist. There is no connection between Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. There are no weapons of mass destruction.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. But it turned out that the sourcing was inaccurate and wrong, and in some cases deliberately misleading. Nope, no weapons over there.
The economy lives and dies on oil. The global economy lives and dies on oil. So it would be naive to say that it's not about oil. It's about oil in a big way.
International trade in oil is all denominated in dollars. When those countries sell oil, the dollars that result from that sale flow into the American banking system. What this means for the United States is that the U.S. is able to purchase oil simply by printing dollars. That's a very good deal if you can keep it going. It's analogous to a cash flow problem which you deal with using the NBNA credit card that you get in the mail. You run up the credit line on that until you can't spend anymore, and then you use the Citibank card that comes in the next day's mail and you run up the credit line on that. The United States has been doing this now since 1980, and it's built up something that economists call the net foreign debt. That net foreign debt now equals more than $3.5 trillion. If you keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, you've got a choice. You can either go to court and declare bankruptcy, or you can pick up a gun and go rob a service station. The United States has elected to pick up a gun and go rob a service station. That's what the war on terror is all about.
Our desire and our need to protect the flow of foreign oil requires us to spend a lot of money in a military presence in the Middle East. We spend $50 billion a year. Just everyday military expenditures to protect the flow of oil, we spend $50 billion.
Congress appropriates money to federal agencies and departments to spend, and they can't account for the transactions that are undertaken with the money. The federal government, as of the year 2001, had over $3 trillion in what the General Accounting Office calls undocumentable transactions. The biggest problem is at the Pentagon.
And its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
I would argue that the most serious threat to the United States is not someone hiding in a cave in Afghanistan or Pakistan, but our own fiscal irresponsibility.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
$2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America.
The attacks happened on the 11th of September, and ever since then, that information has been classified. Americans should be asking, what's happened to the money? Where has the money gone?
Executives from the country's top oil companies found themselves in the spotlight on Capitol Hill today.
Does it trouble any of you when you see what you're doing to us?
Who's getting home with the gods up? Light a fire. Who's getting home with your guns and swords? For who's getting home with truth? The lips of life. Who's getting late? Who's getting yours? Getting
Last year, what was your compensation?
In total, about $12.5 million.
I know it's a matter of public record. I don't know the exact amount.
Well, Mr. Lowe, I wish I made enough money that I didn't even have to know how much I make.
A new world order. Stuff happens, and it's untidy, and free people are free to make mistakes and commit crimes and do bad things.
Listen, every war plan looks good on paper until you meet the enemy.